Hey guys, so basically I'm kind of cleaning up one of my worm farms, if you guys are just joining, and I'm going to use some tea, a little bit in it later, but basically I'm cleaning up one of the bottom layers. So I got this empty tote right here that I use for the lid. I'll move this over to here. Set that down in there. And basically, you're left with this muddy sludge stuff, and there's some worms in there. But what we're going to do is we're going to drain water through this, and we're going to knock all that sludge down, and we're going to pick the worms out, put them back in there, and then later I'm going to feed the worms. So that's what we're doing. So I'll grab an empty pop 2 liter. I'll grab a funnel. Put the funnel in here. You probably won't be able to see this part, but on the bottom there's a drain right there. It's hanging over the edge of my counter. So I'm going to drain. And what I'm doing is I'm making worm tea concentrate. It'll be really, really thick, dark worm tea. And it will be able to be diluted probably 5 to 1 or 6 to 1. It's a lot better than regular worm tea. You won't even be able to see through it. It'll be real thick and dark, like super black coffee. When I'm all said and done. And this is just the leachette that was in the bottom of the tank. It's not worm tea concentrate, it's just regular leachette. So what I'll do, set this over here for now, is I'll lightly start pouring this into here, and it'll slowly dissolve all those worm castings, as you can see. And then I'll pick out what I call the bottom feeders. Some worms like to try to go to the bottom, and they like to, most worms don't like their own feces and stuff, but some do. And if you're using water out of your sink, you need to let it sit out for 24 hours so it's dechlorinated. You do not want to use, preferably you want to use rainwater, because you don't want to kill the microbes. The microbes are everything when you're talking worms. For your garden, growing plants in your house, setting up your own ecosystem, whatever you're trying to do, you want those microbes. So you don't want anything that's going to kill those microbes. So preferably rainwater or distilled water, or if you're using water out of your sink, just make sure you let it sit out for 24 hours. And basically, as you can see, this sludgy stuff right here is slowly dissolving. I'm just going to move it around. And this worm tea concentrate, it can sell for about $60 a gallon up to about $80 a gallon. But you really got to watch what you're buying online, because you don't really know where it's at and who it's at. So you probably want to find somebody that has a worm farm or is worm farming and buy directly from them or from a farmer's market. That way you're getting the really, really good concentrated stuff. And as you can see, all that sludge is slowly dissolving, and there's worms in there. And then so I'll take this new water here, pour a little bit more water in there. See how I'm draining that through there? See how much cleaner that looks? And the water won't hurt the worms as long as you get them out of there within a matter of probably 10 or 15 minutes, you know. And usually there's no eggs on the bottom, so you don't have to worry about eggs. And if you're trying to grow a lot of worms really fast, you don't want to get rid of the eggs. You don't want to damage the eggs, because each egg can produce anywhere from 15 to 30 baby worms. They're actually called cocoons. They're like little tiny balls. See, now you can see the worms in there. And then what I'll do is I'll grab this funnel again, put it in here, and I'm going back to draining it out again. And you'll be able to see how concentrated it is and how dark it is. And you'll understand what I'm saying when I say concentrate. Regular warm tea isn't near as dark as this stuff. This stuff here will be really dark, because it's got a lot more worm manure in it. Now that right there, see how dark that is? That's what us gardeners call warm tea concentrate, or black gold, because it looks black. So basically I'm going to repeat the process. I'm going to rinse through some more, and then eventually I'm going to pull the worms out. I'll show you how I pull the worms out. I get one of these tags, these garden tags, and I just use the spike like that, and you can pick them up and just move them into your other worm farm over there, your other bin. And these are adult worms, because they're really large, so they're actually breeding. So you want to keep these large worms. You don't want to hurt them. If you accidentally cut one in half, they will actually regrow. They'll turn into two worms, but only one worm will be able to produce. This is a healthy red wiggler right here. You see that band right there? That means they're actually in the reproductive stage and they can start having babies. So you just basically are taking this. You don't even have to really get your hands dirty if you don't want to. Or you can wear rubber gloves if you're afraid to touch the worms. There's another nice healthy worm. And I'm just moving them into the top bin over here, which they'll enjoy because I'm getting ready to feed them. I'm getting ready to feed them one of their favorite foods, pumpkin. And then I got some cantaloupe rind that I had froze from my garden earlier. And then I'm going to feed them some banana peels. Here's another nice healthy worm. Kind of show you what they look like. If you're just joining, I'm cleaning out my worm farm. I'm showing people how to add microbes to the soil by starting a worm farm. There's a nice red wiggler right there. I don't do this to make money. I do this to educate people because I believe we can save the world one worm at a time. If we can bring back our ecosystems and get the microbiology set in the soil, it'll lower carbon emissions. People will have healthier food. People will feel more healthier. And it's just a good thing to do. There's another one. So yeah, basically, you can either pour this concentrate back through again, see how dark that is, or I can start with a little bit more fresh water. I'll probably just start with a little bit more fresh water. This time I'll probably pour it a little more on the sides. A lot of times the worms, they'll climb up the sides to try to get out of the water if they feel the water coming down on them. And then you can just pick them off the sides. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. It looks really messy, but it's really not. As long as you keep the worms in these totes, you're going to get some good worm tea. See how that one there's climbing on the side? You just grab him up. They're also called trout worms. People use them for fishing trout. Red wigglers, California red worms. There's a whole bunch of different names for them. Those are nice healthy ones. There's two of them right there. another one. Here's another one that was climbing up the side. Oh, he fell out on the counter here. But yeah, if you want a healthy garden and you want the most nutritious vegetables, fruits, you can use it for fruit trees. You can use it for your house plants. If you're using synthetic fertilizers for your house plants, the disadvantage to that is it's releasing all that carbon back in the air. If you use this for your house plants, you're using worm castings or worm tea. It's gonna make the soil more active, more alive, and it's gonna store all that carbon. So you're gonna get more fresh oxygen in the air from your house plants, rather than having all that carbon come back in the air. So it works for house plants. I got some aloe vera plants I'm growing over there, some succulents. I got a pineapple growing over there on my kitchen, and I feed them the worm castings. The thing is, when you know you're making your own fertilizer, you're not only saving money, but you're adding nutrition to your diet, because the plants are going to uptake a lot better nutrients. Ooh, there's a nice big fat one right there. So yeah, that's the advantages to it. Making your own fertilizer. Your plants are going to grow bigger, stronger, healthier. You're going to have millions and billions of different types of microbes coming alive in the soil. You'll start to see animals will sense that extra energy in the soil. And I don't know if they can sense the carbon not coming out of the soil or what. And like one of my trees out here, my apple trees, it always has birds in it. None of my neighbors' trees have birds in it. And they just hang out up there. I don't know why. They're not really eating anything. They're just hanging out in my tree. You'll start getting all kinds of good bugs. Frogs will start popping up. Had frogs coming, not toads, frogs come in my garden. So yeah, and it all starts with these worms. You gotta get the micronutrients. If you don't have the micronutrients and the microorganisms, then your plants are not gonna thrive. They'll look real healthy, some plants, if you feed them synthetic fertilizers, but the actual nutrients that you're getting out of the plant when you eat it, it won't be near what it will be if you have this. And you'll notice a difference too. When you start putting this in your soil, you'll notice a big, big difference. Anyway, I'm almost done picking all these worms out. There's probably, I don't know, 200 or 300 in here in this bottom bin. But in this actual worm farm here, I probably have, right about now, I have about 7,000 or 8,000 worms. And they'll reproduce every 3 months and usually double in size. As long as they're healthy, they'll want to breed. If they have plenty of food and the environment's nice for them. And you can literally set this Rubbermaid tote system that I have directions on my other videos to build. You can literally set this system up and you can put it underneath your kitchen sink. It won't stink as long as you're feeding the right nutrients and stuff, and you cover up the top. You can put all different types of stuff in there. You don't want to put too much bread, but you can put a couple pieces of bread, even if it's moldy. They'll eat that. They'll eat almost anything, but they prefer fruits and vegetables. There's a whole big old swarm of them over here, so I'm just going to scoop them up like that. Put them in there. I'm almost done. Yeah, if you accidentally cut one in half, they'll grow 2 worms, but only 1 worm will be able to produce. And once I get enough money, if you guys are following me on TikTok and people are donating money to my cause or whatever, if I get enough money, I'm just going to start giving away worm farms. If I'm not keeping the money, I just want people to get into worm farming and get into gardening and just spread the knowledge. And there's a little tiny baby one right there. So sometimes you gotta look really close for the baby ones because they're really, really, really small. And usually the baby ones, like this little guy right here, he'll usually stay in the top levels. He usually won't go down to the bottom levels. I think that's it. As you can see, I got almost all those worms out of there. There might be a few worms in the bottom down here, so I'll have to dig those out too. Oh, there's one more right there I missed. A little baby worm. I try to save them all. I don't want them to die. Okay, yeah, so there's some worms that made it through the holes and made it into the bottom down here. So I'll just pick those out. Like I said, usually they'll climb up the sides because they don't want to get wet. They don't like light, so if you have light, they'll try to run away from the light. They like the darkness. I try to keep them about 65 to 70 degrees year round. So you don't want to put them in a hot garage. If you guys are just joining, I'm cleaning out one of my worm farms. I'm just kind of moving some of the worms around, and I'm making some worm tea concentrate. It look like this, real black, thick looking stuff. I'm gonna have to grab my little tool here. Pick up some of these this way. More of them got down in here than normally I have because it's probably taking too long showing you guys what I'm doing. So yeah, worms. It kind of looks like a mess, but really it's not that bad. So anyway, I'll drain out some more of this. Use my funnel here. It won't hurt you if you get it on your skin. This is worm tea concentrate right here. So when you're buying this stuff online, you need to look for the worm tea concentrate. Some paper towels here. And if you're worried about getting worms in your concentrate, like there's still some worms down in here, most of this goopy stuff down in here, you can put this back in your top worm here, or you can continue to try to pick the worms out, which is what I'm probably going to do. These were spacers that came apart, so my new design, I actually used plumbing fittings. They seem to be a lot better than these little pieces of pipe that I had. You want to keep the totes spaced out, so you have to have some type of spacer in there. You can use bricks, you can use rocks, you can use whatever you want to use, really, to space the totes out. They like to hide in those spacers.
Charlie.
If they're hollow.
Good girl. Good girl.
Yeah, I'll try to get some more of these worms out of here. So yeah, if you just joined on cleaning out this worm farm, these are what red wiggler worms look like. Every once in a while you might accidentally chop one in half, so you kind of got to be gentle. If you chop one in half, it'll turn into two. You'll get two worms, but only one of them will be able to reproduce. But they'll both still eat and produce castings for you, so I guess if you wanted to, you could cut some of them in half. I wouldn't recommend it, but the part of the worm that has the segmented section on like a bigger worm, that's the actual breeding. That's how you know they're ready to breed. Like this one here. He's got like a segmented section. If you look really close to him, he's not stretched out, so you can't really see it that good. But that means he's ready to breed. He or she. I think they're asexual. But anyway. This is what the muck at the bottom looks like. You can see there's still some worms in there. I'm just kind of trying to wash them around so I can grab them. I haven't done this in quite some time. That's why there's so many worms. Then later today I'll feed the worms. I'll show you what I feed them, how I feed them. And no, it doesn't smell. As long as you're feeding them the right stuff, it's supposed to smell like fresh air from outside. Like smells like nature. And actually the worm castings are, if you touch them it won't hurt you. You won't get some disease or nothing. I wouldn't drink it or nothing, but it's healthy microbes. It's good bacteria. And that's the other thing. When you get good bacteria from these worms in your garden and in your soil, and you eat those plants, you're getting that good bacteria back in your gut, so you have good gut health. And that's key to getting your nutrients, is you have to have good bacteria in your gut. Worms are just like humans when it comes to having the right bacteria in our systems. That we have to have the right bacteria to be able to break down the foods to get the proper nutrients. And the good bacteria, when you start adding this stuff, this worm tea concentrate to your soil, the good bacteria, it'll kill all the bad bacteria. So it'll stop all the bad bacteria, and the bad nematodes and the stuff that's bad won't be able to live because the good bacteria will kill it. There's a little baby one right there. I'm almost done, guys. And I'll show you one more batch of concentrate, what it looks like. Like I said, this right here could, and I had a pretty big garden, this right here will fertilize my garden if I dilute this for over a month. So yeah, you can see how far this stuff goes, and it'll break down slowly over time, because all the nutrients, the calcium, the potassium, the phosphorus, the nitrogen, all the different nutrients that's in there, the iron, it all has a mucous membrane around it, like snot almost. And the worms will put that around it when they digest it and they poop it out. And so you can't over fertilize with this stuff. It'll slowly break down over time. So it's constantly feeding your plants and vegetables on a daily basis, rather than using regular fertilizers or fish emulsion or something like that, it's just gonna, your plants are gonna use it right away, and then it's just gonna get diluted and work its way through the soil. Well, this here will stay in the soil, and it'll constantly break down over time as you water or it rains, and then you're gonna get that nutrients to break down slowly over time, so it's going to continually feed your garden. Not only that, but the microbes, the billions and billions of bacteria and stuff inside of here, they're going to break down other stuff in your soil that your plants normally wouldn't be able to take up, and then your plants will be able to absorb stuff that's in the soil. So a lot of people think their soil isn't good. It is good a lot of times, but the plants, the stuff in the soil is not broken up. The bacteria breaks up the stuff, and they eat all the nutrients and stuff too, and then they break it down into smaller particles, so that way the plant can absorb it. If the plants can't absorb the nutrients, then you're not going to get the nutrients when you eat the vegetables and the fruits. See, I almost got the bottom clean. You see how thick that stuff looks? There's a couple more worms in here. They're being stubborn. There's a little baby there too. You really have to watch for them baby worms. And anybody can do this. And it's great to teach your kids how to make their own fertilizer. And most of this stuff is food scraps. I'm feeding them stuff that normally humans wouldn't eat. Or you're not gonna eat watermelon rinds or pumpkin rinds or leftover pumpkins or cantaloupe rinds or any of that kind of stuff, or banana peels. Humans are not gonna eat that. So that's what you're gonna feed to your worms. They'll eat that stuff. Oh, there's another little tiny baby right there. So basically, from what I'm seeing here, I'm moving this around here, checking that hole there. Make sure there isn't no worms in there. Oh, there's one more. You can see how clean that is now. And that is better than just regular worm tea. That's worm tea concentrate, because it's mixed with the worm manure. So basically, you see. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm cleaning this out if you just joined. And then I'll put this back in here with my spacers. Put this back on here, and then I'm going to chop up some food. My other worm farm, I actually changed the design a little bit on it, and I used coconut fiber below the layer, so the worms don't seem to want to go through it as much. But this worm farm here probably has a lot more worms in it, so even though it's the smaller worm farm, so it's hard to really keep them in control when you got so many in one small area. Okay, there's one more worm right there, see? And then you can also use the worm castings. And the worm castings, they got the microbes and stuff in them too. And they'll keep the soil moist. They'll keep plants going for a long time. Fertilize for a long time. I actually used some of this worm tea on my wife's flowers that she had on the porch. She pulled them down in October. She put them in the garage. She stacked them on top of each other. And I just had some friends over for New Year's, and I was showing them how those plants are still green and still alive, because the soil has life in it. Once the soil has life, the plants will continue to live. Even with very minimal sunlight, even in some cases where, like my garage is not heated, and we've had negative temperatures here where I live, and there's flowers out there still green in those pots from this warm compost and this warm tea. So I'm gonna swish it around one more time here, kind of clean up the edges. Then I'm gonna get a strainer. I think I got a strainer. I'm gonna grab me one of these strainers. That way, any worms that might be left in here, when I strain out this last part, they're gonna get caught in here. I'll put this over here like this. Actually, I need to do something with this water. Or else get me a new bottle. And when you have this stuff, you have to use it right away. You see how I have it filled right here? Or you'll have to take the top off every day, and you'll have to squeeze it like this to get all the air out, and then you'll have to refill it with fresh air and put the top on it about every 2 days, and then shake it up, because you want the microbes in there to have oxygen. If you don't give them oxygen, then they'll turn anaerobic. You want them to be aerobic. And that's the problem when you're buying this stuff online, is you don't know how long it's been sitting in a factory on a shelf or in shipping, and by the time you get it, and then all of that bacteria is dead because it didn't have no oxygen. So when you buy stuff from local farmers, or you grow your own castings, you know that it has the oxygen in here. Like if I were to sell this to somebody, I would always make sure that I would run this back through fresh castings. So that way it has all the microbes and stuff, and then make sure it has about this much air in the top. So this would be considered a full bottle. And so I'm going to shake it up like that. And you get all that air inside of that. So it keeps all those microbes alive. And you're going to take that top off, and you're going to squeeze that out like that, and then you're going to let the air go back in it. Then you're going to put the top on it again, and you're going to give it a good shake. Now, if I sent this to you express or whatever, express mail, this would probably have 2 or 3 days where these microbes would still be alive, because I got oxygen in there. It's not full all the way to the top, and I'm shaking it. So that oxygen will last for a few days. But if you're storing this every so many days, you got to take this off, and you got to squeeze it, get all that air out of there, let fresh air go back in, put the lid back on. You want it to be aerobic. It needs oxygen to stay alive. So don't be fooled when people try to sell you stuff online. They're not telling you all the details behind it. And you think you're getting good fertilizer for your garden. It might be good fertilizer still, but it doesn't have the microbes. The microbes are what you want. You want the microbiology. That's what's going to help your garden. So anyway, I got this last little bit of sludge in here. Got me a clean bottle. Got me a strainer. Got me a funnel. I'm going to go down here, strain this out. You're left with some sludgy stuff, but hopefully it'll catch all the worms that were in the drain hole. Some of them are real baby small drain or small worms, so they won't, you know, you can't hardly see them, and they'll just go down in that drain hole. So now I'm going to take this, set this in here for now, and then this will go back on the top of my worm right here. If it's got any babies in there, they just went right back into the top there. And it looks like, nope, no more worms in here. Well, nope, there's one more worm. One more worm right there, see. So I'm going to get him out of there. So anyway, that basically is going to clean that up. I'm going to take some of this fresh water, pour a little bit of fresh water. If you're using the water, you want to use rainwater, or you want to use non-chlorinated water or distilled water, preferably. Give it one good mix there. See how dark that is? Looks like there's one more little worm we missed right there, little baby. So I'll throw him in there. So basically, that cleaned out that whole mess. So I'm gonna run this down in here. And then you'll get this little sediment pocket here. It's like kind of, some of that's like egg broken down, like calcium, iron. Put that in there too. Kind of wipe this up. So now I put my spacers back in here. You can see how clean that is now. There ain't nothing in there. All them worms were in there. All that mud was in there. So now I take my spacers, put one spacer in each corner. Like I said, normally these are glued onto the bottom, but this is one of my first designs. I changed my design. If you want to see the video, it's in my TikTok profile. So the newer one is not near as clumsy as this one, I guess you would say. You want to check this over for more worms. And there's a little bit of mud in there, but not much, as you can see. And this has got holes in it, so this is going to stack right back. Oh, I already got one there. So, oh, I guess there's some worms on the bottom there that climbed up on there, so I'll scrape those off before I put this back on here. So this is going to go back in here. And now it's evenly spaced. You see my spacing I got here? There's my drain on the bottom. There's vent holes drilled on the sides. So now my next layer is going to go on. So now I put 4 spacers in here. 2, 3, 4. Now this is my top layer. This is where I feed my worms. So this is going to go on here. Oh, a worm dropped down in there, so I'll have to grab him out. So, yeah, this is pretty heavy. This is pretty dense. Eventually I'll go through this and I'll take all these worm castings out and I'll start again, but there's a lot of food still down in there. And so they're still eating on that stuff. So, and a couple worms escaped Alcatraz. And they're in here, so I'll get them out of there. And this is my top lid. Oh, there's another one. Little baby. So another little trick you can do. If you want to speed up breeding, obviously you want to use like pumpkin, cantaloupe, stuff like that, because then they'll all congest together in one area to eat that food because they love it. And then when they're together, they'll start breeding. And if you want to speed them up, you want to get more poop every now and then, more manure from them, more castings, you can sprinkle some coffee grinds or some tea on there. Just regular tea powder. Like you would make your own tea with. You sprinkle a little bit of powder in there. If you have mites, if you have dirt mites growing in there, every once in a while you'll get a little bit of mites in there because they just come from vegetables and stuff that you put in there. The tea will actually help kill those mites, and so will the coffee grinds. So I take these back out of here. Kind of clean this off. Then I'll soak all that in that bowl of water there. So this is my final setup right here. It's a 3-tier. And then this right here doesn't have any holes in it. This is just a storage tote. And so I'll set this on top and that'll be the lid. But usually I want to make it, you want to kind of pile the food up in the center so that way it doesn't, you know, that way the worms get oxygen and stuff. So as you get ready to feed them, the best thing that I found to do is just get you out a cutting board. Get you out a cutting board. Get you a nice sharp knife. This stuff's already been chopped up. I chopped it up before I froze it, so I'm gonna put some of this in there. And these are cantaloupe rinds that I had frozen, so I'm gonna put some of this in there. They love cantaloupe. Put a little bit of the juice in there. This is pumpkin. And you don't have to feed them this, but I'm trying to get mine to breed a lot better and a lot faster, so I'm giving them foods that I know that they'll really eat up really good and that'll help them breed. So, got my pumpkin in there, my cantaloupe in there. And then I got some old, I always freeze all my banana peels throughout the week. And you're going to take these banana peels and you're going to chop them up on your cutting board here. And I always save the ends. One of my videos I show you how you can save these banana peel ends, and you also cut the other end off and you dry them out, and you can actually grind them in a coffee grinder and it'll make a type of fiber that's almost like cocoa core fiber. So you want to cut the ends off, set those aside. because the worms will not eat these ends. They'll sit in there and it's just going to cause a mess. So the best thing you can do with your banana peels is just kind of ball them up into a long thing like this, and then just start chopping them up into little pieces. I used to use scissors, but I found out you can get the banana peels chopped up a lot better just using a knife and a cutting board a lot faster. And if you want to chop them up before you put them in the freezer, that's fine. And that'll give them phosphorus. And they'll also get phosphorus from the tea. So you're going to put a little bit of tea powder on there. And that's going to speed up their metabolism. It's going to make them poop more. It's going to clean them out. It's also going to get rid of any mites or any little dirt mites or anything that might be in the worms, the worm bed. Just regular tea. You can use green tea too if you want. I just use regular black tea. Or you can use coffee grinds. And you just want to sprinkle that all around. Another little trick, when you drain out some of the water off the bottom, to help this decompose faster, you want to put a little bit of that warm urine on there. So just lightly pour some of that, the leftover that drains into the bottom, some of that warm urine in there, and that'll help that food decompose so the worms will eat it faster. The worms don't have teeth. So yeah, this worm farm is good for a week now. I won't do nothing but feed it next week the same way you just see me feed it right here. And then I'll continue to drain out more warm tea out of it. So this is pretty much done. I'm going to put some calcium powder on there. So I grow a lot of tomato plants, so I want my tomato plants to have the right nutrients that they need, and I don't want blossom end rot and all that kind of stuff. So if you feed a little bit of calcium to the worms, they'll eat the calcium. I shred it up real fine into powder with a coffee grinder. And then that way my worm castings got calcium, they got phosphate, they got a little bit of everything nutritious in here. You know, they'll get a little bit of nitrogen and stuff from the tea too. And then they'll eat up that. So the other thing is sometimes you want to give them a little bit of water. They do enjoy water, so we'll give them just a little bit of regular fresh water. I usually pour it on the sides a little bit.
Stay up here.
You want your worm farm to stay fairly moist. And that's pretty much it. If you want to give them a little bit of browns, you can use a toilet paper roll, give them a couple little chunks of cardboard, throw a little bit of cardboard in there. That'll help kind of clean them out too. It's good for them to have a little bit of extra fiber like that. Cardboard's made from trees. They'll eat it. You just throw a couple pieces of cardboard in there, not a lot. So this pretty much is ready now. So what I'll do is I'll put this on here. And I'm pretty much done with this worm farm right now. I'm done cleaning it out. I only ever clean them out probably every 2 months, 2 or 3 months. So see how that tote sits up high because I piled all that up in the middle. And you'll know by looking at the tote and how high it sits, if you wanted to put a mark or something on the side like with the marker, then you can kind of see how that tote will fall down, and that'll let you know if they're running out of food or they're not eating their food fast enough or whatever. So that's pretty much it. That's a worm farm that's ready to go. If you guys have any questions, put in the comments. I'm going to go through the comments real quick. What is going on? I just cleaned out one of my worm farms and I made some worm tea concentrate. It is the best fertilizer. Gardeners call it black gold. That's what this stuff is right here. If you're growing house plants or you want nutritious fruit, vegetables, you're going to need this for your garden. I suggest you would use it, but other people don't necessarily have to use it, but that's what I'm doing. I'm making worm tea concentrate. This stuff sells for about $60 to $80 a gallon. So I'm going to go get my other worm farm. I'll be right back. I'm probably ready to build another worm farm soon. So this is my lid. There's some worms on there. I'll scrape them. So I'm going to clean off the bottom of this lid right here. I'm basically just scraping all these worms. Any leftover food or anything that's on here, I'm going to scrape it all off here. This stuff right here is worm castings. It's basically soil. You could literally grow a plant straight in worm castings if you wanted. The most nutritious, microorganism rich soil that you could possibly get. So if you're new and you don't know nothing about worm farming, basically the biggest advantage to worm farming is microorganisms. A lot of scientists and research over the last few years, they found out that if you don't have microorganisms in your soil, then your plants are not going to suck up the right amount of nutrients. And that's why people are getting having nutrition problems, because they're buying a lot of stuff from the store. They eat an apple, they eat an orange or whatever, and it doesn't have the nutrition in it that it should, because we're using synthetic fertilizers and we're using pesticides and stuff like that, and we're killing all of those good bacteria in the soil. So one way you can stop that and counteract that is to do your research and start learning how to worm farm. Grow your own garden. You could probably, I haven't yet, and I'm going to try to eventually, but you could probably use this and grow hydroponics with it naturally. So basically I cleaned that off best I could. I'm going to go rinse it in the sink real quick. So that's that. This one's going to be a lot cleaner because this is a newer design that I designed, and I have the steps and the videos on how I made this newer design one on my profile. So if you guys are interested in worm farming, and like I said, this one here is 12 quart. The one that I did earlier was 12 quart dish totes. You can buy them anywhere, dollar stores or whatever. They're just dish totes. This is 18 quart, so this is a little bit larger farm. I started out with 1,000 worms in this farm. So I got a lot more than that now. So this is my top layer. You can see I fed them cantaloupe. There's a little bit of cantaloupe rind left last week. You can see them. There's just a little bit of cantaloupe left. I got beautiful, beautiful worm castings. Just beautiful, beautiful worm castings. Really dark, really rich. So good, good, good fertilizer. But this one, unlike the other one, you see the spacers that I glued on there? I used plumbing fittings, so they actually stay on there a lot better. And I put cocoa core in the bottom of the other one, so that way the worms wouldn't be able to get through near as easy. And there's one worm that got through. So look how much cleaner this one is than the last tote. Most of this, I'm just going to pour down in here. And this one here, to get my warm tea from it, I'm going to do it a little different. I'm going to put this back in here, and I'm going to slowly poke holes through here. With this little, this is a tag that you would tag your plants with. And I'm going to slowly poke holes through here. That helps aerate it. Oh, see all that worm castings that stuck on there? Good moist soil.
Moist.
And so what I'm going to do with this one, this was the bottle of water that I had that didn't have any that I had let set out that didn't have any chlorine in it. And this was the strainer that I strained out so that way I could catch the worms. So this water here is really nice and clean. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly pour it through here. So what I've done is I poured that water through there. That water will drain through. See how it's draining through? And it's going to go through that bottom tote. This one here doesn't have near as many worms in it because this is my newest worm farm. So I'm building up the worms, so I'm not really too concerned about getting too much worm concentrate tea out of it. Like this stuff here, as thick as this is, and as dark as that is, you could probably dilute that 6-to-1. This right here would fertilize my whole entire garden for over a month. Every single plant I have for an entire month, this would feed them. Once you put it on there, it'll slowly break down over time because the worms put a mucus membrane over the, so it slowly breaks down over time. So it'll constantly feed from anywhere from 1 to 3 months as that mucuses break down. These are the type of worms that I use. Once again, if you're just joining, they're red wigglers. Most of these were babies when I put them in here, so they're not too big yet, but they're probably just about right now getting ready to be breedable size. They're going to start breeding. You can see some of the stuff that I put in here. Like here's a grape, an old grape. Grapes, cantaloupe, pumpkin. They love pumpkin. So anyway, this right here was the leftovers. You can see how it settled, so that top part's mostly just water. So I'll pour most of that off and leave that sediment down in there. And I'll get this. I'll feed this some more of that water that I had that's non-chlorinated. You want to use distilled water or rainwater, preferably, or non-chlorinated, which means you have to take your water out of your sink and let it sit out for 24 hours. You don't want to kill the microbes. Microbes are the secret to growing a healthy plant and everything. So if you're growing herbs, your herbs will be about 5 to 6 times more potent. You can see how you can kind of see the water sitting up above. So that right there is actually what I would consider concentrate because you can't see through it. It's real dark. So anyway, I'm going to put that in there like that, and all that water's running through, so it's dissolving those. I'm going to put my funnel on, and on the bottom of this one, same thing as the other one, I got a drain. See that? So it sits off the edge of the counter. And I'll come over here, and I'll drain it. And as it's draining, I'll tip it a little bit like this to get that last little bit out of there. And you can see how dark that is. But I want it even darker than that. I want it concentrated. I want it where I can dilute it about 6-to-1 with water. So I'm going to pour it back through again. This time I'm going to pour it more on the edges. I'll just pour the whole thing in there and let it go through. You can also go around and you can poke little holes to help the water drain. As you can see, it's draining. Poke little holes. That way all that water gets through. You don't want them living in a swamp by any means, but you want it to stay moist. So as that's draining, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start feeding this batch here. This batch of worms right here, I want them to breed a lot, so I saved this extra pumpkin for them because they love pumpkin. Pumpkin will help them breed more. When they congest into one area, they'll start twisting around each other and they'll start creating little cocoons they'll get pregnant and create little cocoons, and those little cocoons can hold anywhere from 15 to 30 worms a piece. So you want to put your food usually in the center, and that helps space up your lid. Another thing that they like the juice. They like watermelon and cantaloupe. Watermelon, cantaloupe, and pumpkin. And see, there's a little bit of juice in there. So I'm going to put that in the center too. So I got that done. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick them into overdrive. I want them to produce a lot of castings, and I want them to pee and poop a lot. So it's just like humans. If we drink a lot of coffee or a lot of tea or stuff with caffeine, it's going to flush us out. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sprinkle tea powder. And this will also help get rid of some of if there's any dirt mites or any kind of mites in here. You don't want them in here. So I'm going to put this tea over here. And that'll kick them into overdrive. They love tea. They like coffee grinds. Any of that kind of stuff will help get rid of mites. And it'll help the worms produce higher levels of nitrogen and higher levels of phosphorus. And it'll kill all the bad bacteria. I mean, it'll kill all the mites and stuff. And help the good bacteria. There's one little mite right there. So anyway, just even it out, sprinkle it around. So that's tea. Just regular tea like you buy from the store. So I got pumpkin, I got cantaloupe, I got tea. That's what I'm feeding my worms right now. That's going to speed up their metabolism. It's going to help clean them out. It's going to help them pee and poop. So then I'm going to take some of this. This is eggshell powder that I've grinded up. It's extremely fine powder. I grind it up with a coffee grinder. You can buy the coffee grinders, the push-top coffee grinders on eBay for about $16, $17 shipped to your house. So, see how fine that powder is? and they'll eat that calcium, so that way their castings will have that calcium, because plants need calcium. Plants need phosphorus. Plants need nitrogen. There's also a very little bit of protein in here, because when I crush up the eggshells, I leave the liners in there. So it's a little bit of protein for them too. So yeah. So that way, my worm tea, it's got phosphorus, it's got nitrogen, it's got calcium, it's got potassium, it's got pretty much a little bit of every kind of nutrient and mineral that you want. And like I said, when you fill this stuff up, you want that top layer to be open, so that way it continues to get oxygen. And then you're going to have to take the cap off every so many days, and you're going to have to squeeze out the air like that, and then let fresh air go in there, fresh oxygen. If you want it to last even longer, if you had an oxygen tank or an oxygen producer, you could squirt straight oxygen into it. Like if you were shipping it out to somebody and you wanted them to have some good warm tea that had the microbes still alive. And then you just shake it up. And then that's warm tea. So, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to feed them some bananas. So I'm cutting the tops off the bananas. And I freeze these banana peels. You can freeze them. I always save my tops and the bottoms of the bananas, because the worms won't hardly eat the tops or the bottoms, and it'll take forever for them to break down. And what you do is you dry these tops out, and then you take a coffee grinder and you put them down in there in little chunks, and they'll create a fiber. And the fiber looks like this. It looks just like cocoa core fiber. And this is simply the tops of your bananas and the bottoms of your bananas grinded up. It'll create this fiber. It's almost like cocoa core fiber. And you can use it for hydroponics, or you could use it for planting something in there that needs a good... You can mix it up with soil if you wanted. Or you could use it as bedding for your worm farm later. But so I always cut the tops and the bottoms off my banana peels. And then when I cut the banana peels, I used to use scissors, but I found it was taking too long. See, I just want to cut the bottoms off just like that. They won't eat the tops and the bottoms. And this will give them potassium. So that way you're feeding all this stuff, all these different ingredients to these worms, so that way they're creating all that stuff in their castings. And their castings are going to have a little shell around a microscopic bubble of mucus. So that way when you feed that stuff, you feed this worm poop or this worm tea to your plants, that mucus membrane will slowly break down over time. And as it slowly breaks down over time, that means it's going to continually feed your plants. So that way you're not just giving your plants an instant shot of nitrogen like you would with fish emulsion or synthetic fertilizers. You're giving them a constant dose of food over a period of a month to 3 months, as those mucus membranes break down in the soil slowly. And that's why they say you can't over fertilize with this stuff. I could literally dump all this on one plant and it wouldn't kill the plant, because it will slowly break down over time. And that's the benefit of it too, is it's a long-term fertilizer. So I cut the bottoms, I cut the tops off the bananas. And I found if you just bunch them up like this, I'll just put the board up here on the one farm to show you. You basically take them, just bunch them up like that, and you can slice them. That way they're into smaller pieces. And then you're just basically going to cut it into little tiny... The smaller the pieces, the better. They'll eat them up a lot easier. They'll break down a lot better. And like I said, this is going to add phosphorus, and I added calcium. Then I got more phosphorus from the tea, and then I got nitrogen from the tea powder. That's going to speed up their metabolism. They're going to pee and poop more. You don't want to do that all the time. You only want to do it sometimes. Then I added cantaloupe rind and pumpkin because they love that, and it helps them breed. When they all come together, they'll breed a lot better. And the more worms you have, the more food that they'll eat, and the more fertilizer you're going to get. And the other thing is with everybody switching to organic style of food, and people are realizing that industrial food is poisoned and stuff like that, that means that this stuff is going to get higher and higher in price. It's constantly going up in price. People are wanting to buy and put that organic fertilizer into their gardens and stuff. And they know that worm castings, once they do the research and they find out the truth, that worm castings are the best fertilizer known to man, because of the microorganisms that are in them, people are going to start buying all of this stuff. And when people start buying all of this worm castings, that means the price is going to go up. So if you're already into the business and you're already producing this stuff and you're already selling at your local farmers markets, then you're already set up, you're already established, So, you don't got to go and spend a bunch of money to get set up, because you grew your worms over time and you didn't have a lot of money into it. I think I built this whole tote system for like $78 or $79. And I used a better valve. I used expensive plumbing fittings. You don't have to do that. You could just have this tote just like this with no holes or anything in it, and just throw food scraps in there and get some worms and throw them in there. And then just change it out every so often and move them to another tote. You know what I mean? Just send them through a screen, filter out your worms, and use your castings. Your worms are going to have the nutrition that you feed them. So if you're feeding your worms nothing but cardboard, they're not going to have very much nutritious castings. They're just, So when you're buying castings from somebody, you need to kind of know what they're feeding their worms. Because if you don't know what they're feeding their worms, then you might be putting stuff into your garden or your plants that isn't really nutritious and isn't really healthy. So anyway, this is the rest of the banana peels. Put it on top of the worm farm. Like I said, I usually try to pile it up into a pile. I'm going to add a little bit of cardboard to it. This is a paper towel roll. Cardboard is made from trees, so you can put a little bit of this in there. It's fiber for them. It'll help them stay healthy, help them clean out. You want to add a little bit of fiber. Sometimes like drink carriers and stuff you get from fast food joints, or you get from when you go out to eat, or the compostable egg cartons. You can use that they like that too. Don't put a whole lot in there. They'll also eat bread. If you want to put a piece of old bread that's moldy in here, you don't put a whole bunch of it in here, just a little bit. And this is basically what it's going to look like. And that'll feed these worms for a week. So, once you're all done, you're going to put your top back on. Oop, that was not good. You're going to put your top back on. And the top that I use is just a regular bucket with no holes in it. A regular tote. So you're just going to set that on there. And now this is ready for another week. I won't have to mess with this for at least a week. If I put more food in there, I probably could. But then you might run into a chance of it starting to mold or stink. You don't want that. You want to give them just the right amount of food. You'll kind of see this tote. If you mound up the food in the center, you'll kind of see this tote just slowly go down. You can see like the old stain from the old castings on here. And you'll just see it slowly go down. And when you see it slowly go down, then you know, okay, they need more food. So So that's that. So now we're going to go back to trying to drain out some more juice here. Let's scoot this over here. Now this is kind of what regular warm tea would look like. See how you can kind of almost see through it? It's not that dark. This is concentrate. That's the difference. This you could probably dilute it 2 to 1. This you could dilute it 6 to 1. And I'll probably just pour this right back in here, and then I'll come back later in the week and I'll check it again and see if it's any darker. Like I said, this tote doesn't have near as many worms in it, so I'm not going to get as much good warm tea or castings from it. This is a new one that I just started. So because it's not, in my opinion, it's not dark enough, it's really not worth my time. And a lot of times you want to put, when you put your food in there, you want to pour some of that fresh warm tea over your food, because those microbes and those bacteria that are in there, that are good bacteria, they'll help break down that food so the worms can eat it better. So basically, that's that. I might poke a couple more holes through. What did I do with those tags? Oh, did I leave them in there? No. Oh, I can't find the tags. Well, I'll just use these scissors. But basically, I'm going to poke a couple holes through here. That way it'll help drain out. You don't want them to live in a swamp, but you want it nice and damp. So if you guys have any comments, I'll try to answer the comments. I'll go through and kind of scroll through some of the comments. But basically, today what we were doing is getting this stuff here called warm tea concentrate, black gold. A lot of people call it warm leachette, vercompost. So this right here will fertilize my whole garden for 1 month. It adds a ton, millions and billions of different types of microorganisms into your soil. Just kind of cleaning up the counter here. So yeah, basically these two are done. I'll try to go through and show you guys some of the, or read some of the comments and try to answer some of the comments. So, yeah, you add water to it to start it a little bit. What I did is I have a compost an actual composter outside, and I just took that and I grinded it up into like a nice compost, and that's what I started feeding them on. And then I added a little bit of water to it. So, but yeah, you can use cocoa fiber in the bottom like this. That seemed to work really well with this newer design, and I have this newer design in my profile. If you guys want to build your own worm farm, you can follow the instructions and watch the videos. I explain everything, the cost and everything. So if you guys are looking to feed your house plants this stuff, a lot of people say, well, I don't need it for my house plants because, you know, I use synthetic fertilizers and I'm not going to eat my house plants anyway. Well, the problem with your synthetic fertilizers is if you got like 20 or 30 house plants, they're putting all that stuff. You're not using natural fertilizer like this that has microorganisms. Basically what you're doing is you're hurting that soil, and it's releasing tons of carbon monoxide into your house, and so you're not getting the fresh oxygen that you want. If you use the worm castings for your house plants, then you're going to get that really good fertilizer in there, and it's going to slowly break down over time, so you're not going to have to fertilize as often, for one, and it's going to store all that carbon and all that stuff into the soil, so your house is going to be full of more fresh oxygen from your house plants. So that's the biggest advantage. You can see like some of my house plants, you know, like I put a little banana fiber in there. It's cocoa core. This is a pineapple plant that I grew from the store. So yeah, if you got like succulents and house plants and stuff like that, you want to use this stuff too, because it'll help. For one, it'll help your house smell better. Your house will smell more like a nature smell. And number two, it's gonna trap all that carbon monoxide in the soil, that CO2, and then it's gonna make your house have better oxygen. So yeah. So basically, this is the worm farm. I just fed them. I fed them cantaloupe that I had from my garden left over, a little bit of cardboard so they got some fiber. I used some banana peels. I cut the tops off and the bottoms of the banana peels. And I used watermelon in there, or not watermelon, cantaloupe and pumpkin. So it's got cantaloupe, pumpkin, and tea powder, not used tea, regular tea. And that'll add nitrogen and phosphorus, potassium. You get a whole bunch of, and I also put eggshell powder that I grinded up in my coffee grinder. So if you guys are looking for a coffee grinder, this is what I use. This is what I use to grind up stuff into fine powders. You can buy these for about $16. And if you put all of those right nutrients into your food, then your worm castings and your worm tea, it's going to have the right nutrients. It's going to have the calcium, the potassium, the iron, the phosphorus. It's going to have all that. And what it does is it puts a mucous membrane around that worm manure, and it slowly breaks down over time, so you don't have to continually fertilize your plants. It'll actually fertilize for anywhere from 1 month to 3 months. As that mucous membrane slowly breaks down, then it'll slowly give your plants nutrients. You can't over fertilize with this stuff either. This stuff here, you can't over fertilize with it. So if you're looking for a competitive edge, or you're looking to get into the market as a business, this is probably one of the best businesses you could probably possibly get into right now. Everybody's going to organic. A lot of people are switching their food diets to more vegetarian. Basically, you can just feed it food scraps. I feed it banana peels. And you can see the setup that I got here. It just sits over the edge of the counter. I got a nice brass valve on there. Let me read some more of the comments come in here. I use 5-gallon buckets for my, yeah, you can use anything. Like I could just take one of these dish totes that I can buy for about $3.50 at Dollar General. I don't have to do anything to it. I could literally take this, throw some compost in there, throw some vegetables in there, put some worms in there, and put some type of matting over the top of it, like jute twine matting, like potato sack lining or something like that over the top of it. And I could put this in underneath my kitchen sink, and it won't smell as long as you don't overfeed them. And yeah, you can grow worms in the ground. They have for people who live in cold areas, they actually have ones that you bury into the ground, and it goes several feet below the frost line, and you just go out there and put your food scraps in there. So yeah, basically we're talking about worm tea concentrate, the benefits, microorganisms in your soil, and how to grow the most healthiest, most productive garden that you could ever imagine. You can use it for fruit trees. You can use it for house plants. If you're using it for house plants, the biggest benefit is that it's going to give you better oxygen levels in your house, because if you're using synthetic fertilizers for your house plants, they're releasing all the carbon back into your air. With this stuff here, the microorganisms in here, it's going to trap all that carbon into the soil, because it's going to make your soil alive. Your soil is going to have an ecosystem of billions of types of bacteria, good bacteria, and it's going to release all of that good oxygen. So, like I was saying earlier, I feed them banana peels. What I do is I save the tops of the bananas. I freeze them. You don't have to freeze them. You can use them fresh if you wanted to feed your worms daily, but I only feed them once a week. And I dry them out so they look like this when they're dry. Then I cut them up into little chunks, and I grind them up into this coffee grinder right here. This little cheap $16, $17 coffee grinder. And I get this stuff here. It's banana fiber. It's kind of like cocoa core fiber, but it's actually banana fiber. And you can use that as a bottom bedding in your worm farm. And they'll slowly but surely eat this. So basically we're talking about worm tea concentrate. And I got my 2 worm farms here. I got instructions in my profile if you want to watch how I built this worm farm. It's a really good design. I built it for about $70-something. You could build it a lot cheaper than that if you wanted. But worm tea concentrate is basically extremely thick, basically worm peat and water and worm manure. And it's loaded with microorganisms, billions and billions of microorganisms, and they have to have oxygen to live. And you can basically fertilize your garden with it, or all your houseplants. That's what I fed them today. There's a little piece of paper towel in there, and they'll come up and they'll eat all this in about a week. It'll be gone. I actually put a piece of bread in there the other day, and just to see how fast they would eat it. I came back the next day and it had a big old hole in the center of the piece of bread. So yeah, they eat pretty quick. So if you're not into worm farming and you want to get into worm farming, missed out on most of this. What is the purpose of the second bucket from the bottom? So basically, they're rotating buckets. The second bucket from the bottom, if I wanted to just flip this over and put it in here to clean the castings out, they're basically identical. These 2 here have holes in it, and you can watch that in my profile video when I build this new style one that I have here. So basically, they're just rotators. That way you got one more layer to keep your worms from getting into your worm tea on the bottom. And then the top one is just basically a tote that sits on the top. So let's see, I'm going to go back to some older questions here. These are worm farms. You can put them underneath your kitchen sink and just throw all your old vegetables and food scraps in there. They don't really like meat very much, so you got to kind of watch it on the meat. Let's see some of the questions here. I have good luck making tea. Yes, tea, if you make your own tea, the biggest advantage to making this tea is that you got oxygen in here. If I ship this right now, like this, there's a good chance, depending on the shipping time that it gets to you, that the oxygen level is going to drop in here. And so all of these microbes that are in here that you want for your garden, they're going to be dead. And so the only way I could do it is I'd probably have to ship you like half of one of these if you wanted like a whole liter. basically I would have to have like 2 liters I would ship you, and then you'd have to like make sure and put oxygen here. Like every 2 or 3 days you have to lift this, take this lid off, and you have to basically squeeze like this if you're going to store this over time. And you're going to get all that air out of there, and then you're going to put fresh air in there like this. Or you could just leave the lid off if you wanted, but then you'd run a chance of spilling it. And then you're going to put your lid back on, and then you're going to shake it up. And then that gives that plenty of oxygen where it'll last for a couple days. Like if I was mailing this out, I'd probably do like express shipping. But the advantage to buying and having your own worm farm is that you're getting the fresh leachette that has all the microbes in it. So I'll go back to the beginning here. Somebody, what on earth is going on in that pan in worm farming? Red wiggler worms, compost worms. So we're talking about worm leachette or worm tea. This is worm tea concentrate. There's a difference between worm tea and worm tea concentrate. This I can dilute about 5 to 6:1 with water, 6:1, whereas regular worm tea, it looks like that. And that right there you would just use directly, or maybe you would water it down a little bit. This isn't full, obviously, but that's what it would look like. So the advantage is microorganisms. If you have millions and millions of microorganisms in your soil, then your plants will be able to uptake nutrients that are in the soil that they normally wouldn't be able to uptake. So yeah, we're talking about worm tea, worm compost. I just fed them. So basically these are food scraps that normally I throw away. You can see the worms are already coming up ready to eat it. The worms that we use are red wigglers. If you want to get into this as a business, it's probably one of the best businesses you can get into, as people are starting to go more organic and watching what they're eating nowadays. There's a nice one right there. He's coming up. So they're all getting ready to come up. They don't like the light, so every time I pull the toad off, they'll go back down. But they're coming up in there, and they're starting to eat that fresh food that I just put in there. So yeah, worm tea concentrate, probably the best. Gardeners call it black gold. If you put this fresh worm tea concentrate and you feed your worms the right nutrients, the calcium, the potassium, the iron, phosphorus, nitrogen, all the stuff that plants need, then you're going to get it back out of your worms, and you're going to have a really good garden. This stuff breaks down slowly over time, so I could literally fertilize my whole entire garden for over a month with just what's right here in my hand. Any other questions? So yeah, you can use 5-gallon buckets. They're probably a little more expensive. I buy these totes. I think I got these on sale for like $2.50 or no, they were at Walmart. These were $2 a piece. So your 5-gallon buckets usually, I don't know, I haven't bought any in a while. They're probably at least $5 or more. I mean, unless you can get them free from somewhere. Do you add water to the worms? Yes. As a matter of fact, you want the soil the worm castings to stay fairly moist. And the water that you want to add is rainwater or non-chlorinated water. How long did it take you to get that much? So this worm farm here, I've got probably 8,000 worms in here. And this one here, I probably got about 2,000 or 3,000 worms in here. So this one will produce a lot, even though it's a smaller tote. These are 12 quart. I could probably, with both of these worm farms, if I really wanted to, and I did it more vigorously than I just did in this live video, I could probably produce one of these about every week and a half. And this stuff here will sell for about $60 to $80 a gallon, worm tea concentrate. And the price of this stuff is just going to continue to go up because more people want organic fertilizers. They don't want to use synthetic fertilizers. that means the supply and demand is going to go through the roof. And if you're already set up and you already got a worm farm and you're already growing, then you're in the money. If you're doing it for a business. If you're just doing it for your local, for your own garden, then it's just the best fertilizer known to man. The worms will eat anything. Like I put some of this in here and a little piece of paper towel in that other one. They'll eat cardboard, but they're not going to give you the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and all the other minerals because this is just basically a fiber. It just kind of cleans out their guts. And what they do is they put a mucous membrane around all the nutrients, and that mucous membrane slowly dissolves over time, and so it constantly feeds your plants for a period of a month to 3 months. So you can't over fertilize with this stuff. So fishing worms, yeah, you can use night crawlers. There's certain types of European night crawlers that we eat. But the thing with other worms compared to the red wiggler worms is the food has to break down more, because they more or less eat the stuff that's really, really broken down almost to when it's turned to dirt already. Whereas your red wigglers, like I was saying earlier, I put a piece of bread in there and I came back 3 days later and they'd already ate a hole through it like that. And so the red wigglers will eat the food a lot faster, and it doesn't have to decompose as much. But these red wigglers actually are fishing worms. They're called trout worms. People use them for trout. But yeah, you can grow night crawlers. And night crawlers are really good. But like I said, that you have to wait for the food to break down a little longer. And the night crawlers will actually eat about half their body weight per day. I bought the worms on eBay. And they've gone up in cost significantly. I think when I bought my first order I bought a couple years ago, I think it was, you could buy like 500 worms for like $20 or $25. I think they're more like between 50 and 60 now for 1,000 worms. These are worm farms. You see the worms? They're coming up. And they're eating this fresh food that I just put in here. That's how fast I just literally put this in here within a matter of minutes, and they're already coming up starting to eat on it. You see what I'm saying? That's how fast they want to eat stuff. And this worm farm here I just started and only had about 1,000 worms, and I put babies in here. Baby worms. So they usually, in good healthy conditions, they'll multiply double in size every 3 months. So every 3 months you're going to get, so if you got 1,000 worms in 3 months, you're going to have 2,000. And then in 3 months you're going to have 3,000 is going to turn into 6, and 6 into 12, and so on and so on. But the problem is they're baby worms. They hatch little tiny eggs, the cocoons, and the worms that they're producing are little tiny babies, and it takes them about 6 to 8 months to get to full grown size, so that way they can actually reproduce. So even though you have a whole bunch of worms after 3 months because they've doubled in size, it takes about 8 months for them to actually, you can see them actually coming up. They're coming up for all this fresh food. It takes them about 8 months to get into the reproductive cycle. So it's kind of hard to do the math, but give or take, you can actually push those levels up a little bit by like feeding them some of the things that I'm feeding them. Like they like rinds, cantaloupe, and pumpkin. So if you feed them cantaloupe and pumpkin, that's kind of their favorite food. So they're all going to come together to eat that. And so when they come together, then they'll start breeding more. So you might get a few more worms. Please show each level. Okay, let me put this back in the holder here. I got a little holder that I'm going to put this in, and then I'll show you each level. So, and I have instructions on my, you can hit the YouTube link, or you can watch this on TikTok. And I show you how to make this whole system for less than $70. I'm not making any money on this. I just want you guys to have the knowledge to pass on to your children. I'm not making it. This is not a money-making thing for me. I'm showing you how to do this because I want you to have the knowledge. I want you to be able to eat healthy, fresh food and stuff. So your top one, these are 18 quart totes. and it's just a regular tote, and I just use it as a lid. Then your second one, set this over here. Your second one is where almost all your worms and your castings are. I have to pull this out over here. And then this tote here is identical to this tote here. It's just got holes in it. And so if I wanted to rotate that tote that I just showed you back into this tote and then clean that tote out, like take the castings out or whatever, I could. But this is my second tote, and you can see I got the holes drilled in the sides. This is the second tote. And what I did is I spent the extra money and I got PVC pipe, and I glued the PVC pipes with adapters onto the bottom. So that way I had good spacing. And then the bottom is where you're going to catch all your warm tea, your warm leachette. You see all that warm tea? And then what I did is I bought a more expensive brass valve, and you just cut it out with a razor, and it has a seal. And then this just sits over the ledge. And I got the instructions on how to make this, so you guys can watch it. It's in my profile, or you can watch it on YouTube. So, like I said, the two middle totes are identical. The bottom tote is your drain tote. The top tote is basically your lid. You know, that's what kind of sits on top. So I hope that helped you out a little bit there. So yeah, basically we're talking about worm farming and how to harvest worm castings and worm tea. This is what they call worm tea concentrate, black gold. See how dark it is? You can dilute this 6 to 1, 5 to 1 or 6 to 1, and this will fertilize my whole garden for over a month. And it slowly releases over time, because the worms, when they eat all the nutrients, they put a mucous membrane around all of it when it comes out of them, their manure. And it basically sits in the soil, and it slowly breaks down over time, so that way you can't over fertilize with it. And it basically feeds your garden for a long period of time. These are worm farms. If you want to make your own fertilizer and you want to go organic, or you're growing vegetables, or you have house plants, like I was telling somebody, a lot of people have house plants and they're using synthetic fertilizers. If you got 50 or 60 house plants and you're using synthetic fertilizers, you're putting out CO2 into the air, and you're breathing in that CO2. If you want fresh oxygen in your house, then you need to use this, because this right here is going to make the soil alive, and it's going to trap all those CO2 emissions. And so it's going to let fresh oxygen, and your house is going to smell more like a rainforest, and it's going to have like a fresh smell, and you're going to have more oxygen levels in your house. If you're using it for gardening, then it's going to make your fruits grow bigger, grow healthier. All of your herbs are going to be about 6 times more potent than anything you can buy in the store. If you're growing parsley or oregano or cilantro or any of that, your herbs are going to be like super, super potent. When you cut them, and you'll see, they'll be so potent that you won't even be able to hardly stand it, how strong they are. You'll be able to grow herbs and vegetables and stuff that have tons and tons of nutrients, way more nutrients than anything you could buy in the store. And it's basically all from these little red worms. You can see they're coming up. I just put this food in here, and they're literally coming up that fast, and they're getting ready to eat the food. What I fed them today, I fed them pumpkin and cantaloupe and banana peels, and then I put a little bit of eggshell powder for calcium, and then I gave them a little bit of tea, just regular tea like you would drink. So yeah, gardeners call this black gold. This stuff here sells for anywhere from $60 to $80 a gallon. So yeah, if you're looking into getting in this business, I have all the videos on my profile on how to make one of these. I have tons of gardening videos showing you some of the crops that I grew. I had 13-foot tall tomato plants, all kinds of stuff. If you guys want to check out some of my videos in my profile, you can use like a bedding like this. You can use cocoa core. This is banana core fiber that I make from taking the tops of the bananas off, and then I grind them up into I grind them up in a grinder, a coffee grinder, and I get this nice fibrous material. So yeah, I spent a little bit more money on this. You could build this a lot cheaper. I think these totes were $3.50 or $4 a tote, because these are the bigger 18-quart totes. But the reason I like these totes is because if one breaks, you can easily go buy this down at any store. You can buy them at Walmart, you can buy them at Dollar General. And then what I did is I bought a Rain Pal valve. So it's a really heavy duty brass valve. You can hook a garden hose onto it if you want. And later when I build a bigger, I'm going to build a better growing operation. I'll just have hoses running into a trough. Let's see, any more questions? So yeah, they're worm farms. How much water do you give them? I would probably say not a whole lot, probably half of a liter every week and a half. But like I said, it all depends on how many worms you have and how fast they're eating the food. I mean, if you like this tote here, I just built this one and I just put a bunch of baby worms in there, 1,000. I built it a couple months ago. So it's probably got about 2,000, maybe 3,000 worms in here, give or take. But a lot of them are babies, so I wouldn't have to water this one as much because it doesn't have as many worms in here. But this one here, the smaller one, this one's probably got like 6,000 worms in it or more. So this one here, I'd probably have to water a lot more, and they're going to eat a lot more food. You can see the tote sitting up from when I just fed them, and over time it'll slowly start settling down. And then that's how I know that, like, you could do a line on it with a marker, but I just kind of look at the darkness and I can see, oh, when I see nothing but light, then I know it's settled down and it's time to feed them. But usually I feed them every Sunday, once a week. They'll eat almost anything. Could you give into greater detail on how you make the banana fiber with the grinders? So yeah, the banana fiber. So basically what I do is when I eat a banana, I freeze the banana peel. You can cut these off after or before, it doesn't matter. And then I just throw them in this cardboard box, and then they dry out like this. And then you buy one of these cheap $16 coffee grinders on eBay, you know, just a push button, just a regular coffee grinder. And you chop these up, probably chop this up into like 3 sections, 1, 2, 3, and you throw them all in there, and you just grind the heck out of it, and it'll make this banana fiber. You can use this for hydroponics. You can grow plants in it, put it in your little cups and stuff, or you can use it as bedding in your worm farm to keep them from getting down to the next layer. It's pretty much almost identical to cocoa core fiber. I also take the bottoms off too. I take the bottoms off the bananas and I take the tops off. I just feed the skins of the bananas to my worms. How much water? Okay. Anybody else have any questions? If I know the answer, I'll answer it. If I don't, I won't. I'm not going to BS you. So just feel free to ask any questions if you have any questions of why do I do this or anything. So yeah, it's basically you just need a few simple things. Like I think I built this one for $70-something, and most of my cost was in the plumbing fittings because I wanted good spacers. So if you look at this, you see all the worms coming up here. I'll try to pull this up real quick and show you. You can use bricks for spacers, you could use rocks for spacers, you could use tops of pop bottles. But I use PVC fittings for my spacers. And I have instructions on how to build this on my YouTube channel, or you can get on my TikTok and you can watch the videos there. And I have all kinds of videos on worm farming and gardening. You can see some of the crops and some of the garden stuff that I've grown using no-till methods with worm castings. The types of worms are red wigglers or California red worms. Some people call them trout worms, compost worms. It's in my TikTok. You can click on the YouTube. It's Hobbies Galore and More. How do you harvest the castings? So basically, hold on. Let me get something real quick and I'll show you. I have it out in the garage, so. So basically, we just got a new greyhound we adopted. Her name's Charlie. She was an underground racer. She's a pretty good dog. But anyway, so basically you buy these little screens. And so you basically don't feed them for like a week or two, and you let the castings dry out. And then you basically put this over a bucket and you start putting the castings in there, and then the worms will not be able to go through this. And then if you want a finer one, like you want to catch baby worms or something, you can use one of these finer mesh ones. But yeah, the castings usually you just use a screen or a strainer like this, and you strain out all the worms and you throw them into another tote, and then you have your castings. But your castings are not really, in my opinion, they're not near as good as the worm leachette. So you're better just to dissolve the castings into leachette, worm tea. I actually made this. These are just dish totes that you can buy at Dollar General. I bought these screens on eBay. I think they were like $20 or $30 or something like that. They're different meshes. I bought the worms on eBay. Where did you get the screens? On eBay. It's not on there, but I look it up. Okay. Is the compost tea in the bottle? Yeah. So this is compost tea right here. This is actually what they call black gold or concentrate. You could dilute this 6-to-1. One of these bottles like this will fertilize my whole entire garden for a month. And I grow a lot of stuff. So yeah. The advantage to having your own worm farm is you want to keep the microorganisms alive. If you're buying like worm castings, and stuff online, that's fine. Like you can get these worm castings, you can buy them online. But if they're not fresh, then a lot of the microorganisms are going to die. And if you're buying the worm tea and they didn't oxygenize this and they let it sit on a shelf for too long, then all of the good microbes in here have died. They take oxygen. So if you're storing this warm tea, you have to take the top off every now and then. And you basically, I squeeze the bottle to get all the air out. And then I suck fresh air in there. Or you can just leave the lid off of it. But then you run a chance of spilling it. And then you basically shake it back up. And then that oxygenizes it. And it'll probably be good for probably 3 or 4 days like that. If you don't give it oxygen, then the bacteria in here turn anaerobic instead of aerobic, and you want aerobic, not anaerobic. So yeah, it's basic stuff here. You got a couple strainers, a couple dish totes. You buy one of these rain pal valves, some empty bottles, a cheap funnel, a screen, you know, some scissors, some knives to feed them, to cut stuff up. Yeah, you have to keep the warm leachette See, a lot of people buy this stuff online, and I don't have a problem if you buy stuff online, but you need to make sure you know who you're buying it from. If you're buying it from some big corporation, they're not oxygenizing this stuff. You know, it's been sitting on a shelf probably for 2 or 3 months, and all the good microorganisms that's in there are dead. So you're buying it just for the fertilizer potential of it, which is good, but you're not getting the microorganisms that you want. The microorganisms is what's going to break down all the stuff in the soil. It's going to create an ecosystem, and that's how your plants are going to become healthier, and you're going to become healthier because you're going to eat the plants that had all the nutrients that they needed, and that nutrients is going to go back in you. So, did you get the worms? No. These are worms that do not normally live in a cold climate. I live in a cold climate. These are compost worms. I bought these on eBay, and I bought them years ago, and I think I started out with 500 worms, and I probably have close to 6, 7, 8, maybe close to 10,000 now, between 8 to 10,000 worms now. And yeah, the worms will double in population every 3 months. So, like, if I got 10,000 worms right now, in 3 months I'll have 20,000 worms, and in 3 months from that I'll have 40,000, and so on and so on and so on and so on. So I've done the math at the current rate, like I drain off. If you was going to do this as a business, to make about $1,200 US a month, you're going to need about 450,000 worms. But if you bought all those worms from online, you're going to have several $1,000s into your investment. Plus, you have to make all your totes. But if you start small and you take care of your worms and you feed them stuff that makes them want to breed and multiply, like I have in some of my videos you can watch, then you're basically starting out with a little bit of nothing expense, less than $100 expense, and you just keep on over time, over a period of 2.5, 3 years, and eventually, like, you're gonna get those higher numbers of worms if you wanted to do it as a business. I'm just doing it to educate people. I want people to understand how to grow healthy crops and how to teach their children and their grandchildren how to make your own fertilizers. And, you know, it's a great hobby for kids. My son, he loves it, and, you know, they like looking at the worms and stuff. And so, any other questions? So yeah, I guess I'll drain out some worm leachate, since I ain't got the camera sitting on here, and I'll kind of show you how I do it here. This camera and do it at the same time is a trick. So basically, I'm gonna turn here, and these valves are rain pal valves. They're like a really heavy duty brass valve, and you can hook a garden hose on the bottom of it. So basically, and this is regular warm tea. You see how it's kind of clear looking? It doesn't have the darkness to it. So don't be fooled when you're buying this stuff online. If you think, oh, I'm going to buy some warm tea, you want the dark, you want the concentrate. The concentrate, to give you an example. So this is what regular warm tea looks like. Some of it will look even less light like this, and that's fine if you're just using it daily for your garden. But you can see the difference between the concentrate. See the difference? And the concentrate, like if you come over here to my pantry, you see how all these are really dark, how they stay really, well, that one needed to be mixed up a little bit, but yeah, you basically, the concentrate is really dark and thick, so you can dilute it 6-to-1. So, okay, I'm going to slide over to YouTube and learn about worm composting. Okay, that sounds good. It's a good business to get into. It's good for your house plants. I was telling people earlier, a lot of people use synthetic fertilizers because like it's a house plant. I'm not going to eat it. I'll just use some. My plant looks healthy with this synthetic fertilizer. The problem is synthetic fertilizer is killing the soil that your house plants are growing in, and your house plants are releasing a ton of CO2 into your house. And if you have this in your house plants, then your house is going to smell more earthly, like a rainforest, and you're going to have that nice oxygen in your house, and rather than the CO2 that's going to be emitted if you don't have the right microorganisms in your plant. So, anybody, what is the YouTube profile picture? Hold on. I'll post it in, there's actually a link on the, if you go to my main TikTok page and you just click on that, it'll take you right to my YouTube. So basically, like I said, if you're just doing it for the castings, you're going to get one of these screens and you're going to screen out the castings. So this one I fed them earlier. You can kind of see some of the stuff that's in there. Pumpkin, a little bit of banana peels. So see, they're coming up. They're already eating on that. I just put that in there. They don't like the light, so every time I take the lid off, they try to burrow back under. But you can actually see him. There's a nice big healthy one. That ring right there on him. See that little bubble ring right there? The kind of thicker part in his midsection. That means he's able to breed. He's old enough, he's going to start breeding. He or she, I think they're asexual. So yeah, they have to have that segmented section to be able to breed and create babies. They create little cocoons. There's one popping out. He went back down. Yeah, you can use all different types of worms. The disadvantage to using other worms is that the food has to break down better. Yeah, they're red wigglers. Red wigglers, trout worms, California red worms, they're all the same. You can use night crawlers, European night crawlers. Like I said, they don't tend to eat fresh food like this. See, these guys are already coming up eating this fresh food I just put in here. So you have to wait for the food to break down more. So it might cause if you're doing earthworms, you could probably do it, but it's probably going to be a little bit more. You're probably going to get stink. You're probably going to get mold and stuff growing because they're not going to eat it as fast. They wait for the bacteria to break it down more. So that's why red wigglers are usually the #1 worm that people use. How did you get the dark bottle? Okay, so the dark bottle, basically I was showing earlier. So this worm farm here that's got a whole bunch more worms in it than this bigger one here. Basically, there's a sludge, almost like a muddy stuff that'll settle down to the bottom layer right here, this layer right here. And so what I did is I picked all the worms out of there and I kept running water through this, and then it's got holes in it, drop down to the bottom down here, and then I get what they call the concentrate, which is a super heavy duty, really thick. You could dilute this like 5-to-1 or 6-to-1 to fertilize your garden. Or if you didn't do that and I just poured fresh water over the top, like if I just poured fresh water over the top here and let it run down and then took the water out, it's going to look more like this. It's going to be just a regular warm tea. It's not going to be a warm tea concentrate like this. This right here is basically like 6 bottles of this. See that? See the difference? This looks more like tea, I guess you would say. And this is basically concentrated. This is a whole bunch of worm castings that have dissolved in the water. Yeah, the wigglers are best for composting. And you can use any worms for composting, but the advantage to the wigglers is they'll eat right away. I was saying earlier, I put a piece of bread in one of them to see how fast they'd eat a piece of bread. I came back the next day, and there was a big hole in the center of the bread. So that's how fast they eat. Like, they're literally, I just put this food in here today, and you can see them all coming up. They don't like the light, so every time I pull the lid off, they go back down. But you can see them coming up already, and they're eating this food. And they'll go through and they'll eat this up. So, anyway, I'm done for the day. I'm going to charge my phone. I might get on here later tonight. So, you guys can watch all my videos on my gardening, and you guys can watch the videos on TikTok on how I built these. My battery's going dead on my phone. So, how often do you change their bedding? About every 4 or 5 months I change their bedding. What type of food do you use? I use banana peels, I use pumpkins, I use watermelon rinds, I use cantaloupe rinds, I use crushed eggshells. What are you going to, those are going to taste good, yeah. And then see, whatever you're feeding the worms is what you're going to get out of them for the nutrition in your vegetables. So if you don't feed them the right nutrition and just feeding them cardboard like this, then they'll eat it and they'll create castings, but the castings are not going to have the right nutrition, the right nutrients. So whatever you put into them, you're going to get out of them. I also feed them, like today I did a regimen of tea, regular tea. I cut tea bags open and just sprinkle it on there. And that'll speed up their metabolisms and make them poop and pee a lot faster, and it'll clean them out. And it also gets rid of mites. You can also feed them coffee grinds. They'll eat almost anything. If they're starving and they don't have no food, then they would eat almost anything. But they don't really like meat, and you wouldn't want to put meat in there anyway because it would stink up your house. Well, these right here, the way I'm doing it, you won't get any smell from this. They'll actually, their enzymes and stuff in their stomachs will stop the food from rotting where it actually produces a smell. All right, well, I'm getting off of here, guys. I got to go charge my phone, so please follow my link for my YouTube. It's on the main profile picture. You can watch the videos on TikTok on how I built these and all the crops and stuff that I've grown. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.